Air is an abandoned government clinic deep in the Appalachian Mountains that a young doctor rebuilt with his own hands 2 years ago, against the direct warning of the only elder willing to speak to him at all. "That building isn't a hospital," the old man told him. "It's a morgue that hasn't finished collecting the dead." The doctor didn't listen. He'd been dreaming about that exact building since he was a child, long before he ever knew it existed. Within the first month of opening its doors, a 14-year-old boy walked in with no injury anyone could explain, and by morning, both the boy and the nurse treating him were gone. One of them dead in a way no medical report could account for, the other vanished entirely, never seen again. This is part 1 of a story we're going to tell across several videos, because what's buried underneath that clinic is bigger than any single episode can hold. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next, because by the end of tonight's video, you'll understand exactly why that old man told him never to look back. Nurse Sudha Ramirez had worked the overnight shift at the newly reopened Cundigar County Clinic for exactly 10 days. And for 10 nights, she and the 2 doctors who ran it had been the only living people anywhere near the building after dark. Just past midnight on the 11th night, a woman's anguished crying cut through the silence of the empty ward, and every hair on Sudha's body rose at once. "Who's crying like that? There's no patient checked in tonight. That room's been locked for years." Her mind told her it was impossible. Something else, quieter and colder, told her exactly whose voice it might be. She moved toward room 9, pressed her face to the small glass pane in the door, and found the room completely empty. The crying stopped the instant she arrived. Confused, she turned to leave, and the door behind her exploded into a furious pounding, as though something on the other side was trying to break through. "Who's there? Who is that?" The pounding stopped. The crying started again, closer now, layered with something that sounded almost like laughter underneath the grief. Sudha ran toward Dr. Raghav's office, only to freeze at the sight of a woman in a black shawl standing just outside his door, staring directly at her. "Who are you? What do you want?" The woman lowered her hood. What was beneath it wasn't a face at all. A shifting, ash-gray shape where features should have been, dissolving into the air the instant Sudha screamed and collapsed to the floor. Dr. Raghav Singhania burst out at the sound of her scream. "Sudha? What happened? Why are you on the floor?" "There was something here, doctor. Right here." It turned to ash right in front of me and vanished into the air. "You're imagining things. Who would even be out here? You know the villagers won't come near this hospital. It's just been the 3 of us for 10 nights straight." Sudha couldn't shake what she'd seen, no matter how reasonably he explained it away. "Answer me one thing, doctor. Did you hear a woman crying tonight?" "I heard nothing. I think you need rest, that's all. I'm on duty. If a patient comes in, I'll handle it. Go get some sleep." Walking back toward her quarters a short distance from the clinic, Sudha heard footsteps behind her. She turned, and a sudden gust of wind carried a fine cloud of black ash directly into her open mouth. For a brief moment, her pupils went entirely black before returning to normal, and she continued on to her room as though nothing at all had happened. The next morning, for the first time since the clinic reopened, villagers actually arrived at its doors. A frantic couple carrying their 14-year-old son, Danny, whose entire body had turned an unnatural shade of blue-gray overnight, his eyes refusing to open no matter what they tried. "Please, doctor, we've tried everything ourselves. You're our last hope. Don't worry. I'll do everything I possibly can." Raghav admitted Danny immediately, and he and Dr. Kristen, the second physician who'd followed Raghav out to this remote clinic, began running every test available to them. "Raghav, something about this boy's condition doesn't sit right with me. No bite marks. No sign of poisoning. What could cause this so suddenly? I don't know either. Let's keep him under observation tonight. If we can't identify anything by morning, we refer him to the city." Night fell. Raghav and Kristen were both on duty when, deep into the night, Danny's unconscious body suddenly stiffened and rose upright from the bed like something reanimated rather than waking, startling Kristen badly. "Lie back down, Danny. Let me look at you. Are you all right?" Kristen pressed her stethoscope to his chest. Danny shoved her violently across the room. Danny, are you okay? I'm calling your parents right now." Please, just stay calm." Still treating him as a frightened patient, Kristen looked into his eyes and felt an involuntary shudder run through her entire body. His pupils had gone completely unnaturally black, his expression as flat and lifeless as a corpse risen from its own funeral pyre. The old fluorescent light overhead began flickering violently, and a thick, damp, rotting smell flooded the room from nowhere. "What is happening? Danny, what are you doing?" Danny stared at her in total silence, then reached for her throat, advancing toward her with slow, deliberate steps. Kristen's screams brought Sudha running into the room, and without hesitation, she grabbed Danny by the neck and slammed him hard into the wall. He crumpled to the floor, blood pooling from a wound on his head. The moment blood touched the floor, something in Sudha changed entirely. She dropped to her hands and knees, crawling toward Danny with an animal's hunger, and began licking at the blood pouring from his skull. Kristen stood frozen in the corner, paralyzed by what she was witnessing, unable to move or speak. In the next instant, something seized hold of Sudha completely. She wrenched Danny's arm from its socket with impossible strength, tearing it free of his shoulder entirely. Kristen's vision went black. She lost consciousness on the spot. She woke sometime later to find Raghav sitting beside her. "Kristen, what happened in there? How did that boy die? And where did Sudha go?" Sobbing, Kristen described everything she'd witnessed, and Raghav sat in stunned, horrified silence as she finished. Sudha was nowhere to be found in the clinic. Danny was dead, and neither doctor had any explanation they could offer that made a single piece of it make sense. To understand how any of this happened, you need to understand why Raghav Singhania, the only son of a wealthy businessman who could have handed him an empire, chose instead to build a clinic in the poorest, most remote village he could find. "Are you sure about this, Raghav?" Kristen had asked him 2 years earlier, before any of them had ever set foot in Kundangar. There's a difference between caring about people and actually risking your entire life for it. You're a gold medalist, Raghav. After your residency, you could practice at any hospital in the country and make more money than you'd know what to do with. If money was what I wanted, Kristen, I could have just joined my father's business. My life has a different purpose. I'm not going to waste it chasing money alone. I've met plenty of people who talk a big game, Raghav. You're the first person I've ever met who actually meant it. Giving up everything your family has to go live in the middle of nowhere. Raghav had loved Kristen deeply during their years together in medical school. But he understood, even then, that pursuing his purpose meant he couldn't ask her to follow him into it. Don't be sad, Kristen. I understand how you feel, and I respect it completely. But I want you to move forward with your own life. Don't wait for me. I'm not coming back. And I promise you, I never once expected you to risk everything and follow me here. But there was something Raghav hadn't told her, not fully. Since childhood, he'd been haunted by strange, half-formed dreams he could never quite make sense of. Dreams that slowly sharpened over the years into something unmistakable. A specific hospital, in a specific remote village, that he had never once visited in his waking life. I asked my father more than once whether we had any connection to Kundangar. Raghav admitted to Kristen, the day she finally arrived at the clinic herself, having refused to simply let him go. He always denied it. I came here to find the missing pieces myself. Something about this place feels like it's been waiting to tell me something. Kristen, every corner of this building feels like it's calling to me. Unwilling to be separated from him any longer, Kristen eventually followed him to Kundangar anyway, bringing Sudha along as their nurse. On his very first day in the village, before any of this had happened, Raghav had approached an elderly man for directions to the government clinic he'd been told existed there. The old man had looked him up and down with open suspicion. Why would you want to go there? That's not a hospital. That's a morgue that hasn't finished collecting the dead. Whoever walks in there ends up worse off than the dead themselves. Turn back. Don't even look behind you toward that place again. Raghav had dismissed it as local superstition at the time, an isolated community wary of outsiders and modern medicine. He found the clinic exactly where the old man had reluctantly pointed, a crumbling structure with a faded government sign, and set to work rebuilding it with his own hands over the following weeks. Now, standing over Danny's body with Kristen still shaking beside him, that warning echoed in his mind with a weight it hadn't carried before. With a dead boy in their clinic and no explanation they could safely offer a grieving, distrustful village, Kristen proposed the only plan she could think of. "What are we going to tell them, Raghav? That boy was our responsibility. This is a tribal village, they already don't trust our methods. If they find out our own nurse killed their child with her bare hands, we won't leave this village alive. I have an idea. We seal the body and tell them there's a dangerous infection in his system, that anyone who touches him risks catching whatever killed him. Maybe they'll believe it. It's our only chance." Raghav delivered exactly that story to the village elder the next morning, handing over Danny's sealed body with a grave explanation about contagion and risk. "I believe the doctor is telling the truth," the elder told the gathered villagers. "That boy's condition was never natural. If the doctor says no one should touch him, then no one touches him. We'll bury him exactly as he is, sealed, so no sickness spreads through this village." The villagers accepted the explanation. For now, at least, no one in Kundangar knew that Nurse Sudha's own hands had taken Danny's life. But Raghav and Kristen were left with a set of questions that offered no comfort at all. What had actually happened to Sudha? Why had she turned on Danny with such sudden, inhuman violence? Where had she disappeared to afterward? And what, exactly, was buried underneath this clinic that had been calling to Raghav his entire life, long before he ever knew its name? If a place had been appearing in your dreams since childhood, long before you ever knew it was real, would you go looking for it? Or would you already know better? This is only part 1. In part 2, we'll find out exactly where Nurse Sudha disappeared to, and what Raghav discovers buried beneath the clinic's oldest wing. Something that connects directly to why he's been dreaming about this exact building his entire life. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss it.